Welcome, everyone, to today's deep dive. We are really thrilled to have you with us because today you and I are exploring a wildly creative approach to understanding a country's culture.
It really is.
Yeah, we've got our hands on this fascinating document. It's titled Netherlands Group Research Notes.pdf, and it's dated March 15th, 2026.
Right.
And this isn't your standard, run-of-the-mill tourist guide, the one that just lists opening hours for museums and things like that.
No, not at all.
It's actually designed as a lyric toolbox for a songwriter. The author has taken 5 major Dutch cities and mapped them to 5 highly distinct sub-personalities to help craft music.
Which is such an unusual framing.
It is. We are talking about character profiles named Addie, Bannock, Devon, Liz, and Tira. So our mission for this deep dive is to use this musical, character-driven lens to really unpack the history, the culture, and the unique beating heart of the Netherlands.
I love this approach because viewing geography through the lens of psychology is, well, it's a remarkably effective way to process historical data.
Right.
When you are just staring at centuries of dates, architectural shifts, and political treaties, the information quickly becomes overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely. It just turns into noise.
Exactly. But by treating these cities as individual characters, giving them distinct tempos, vocabularies, and emotional arcs, you can synthesize complex cultural information intuitively.
It makes it human.
Right. It gives a songwriter, or really anyone trying to understand the region, a structural framework to explore how historical trauma or triumph literally shapes the modern rhythm of a street.
Okay, let's unpack this by starting with our first character, Addie, who represents the city of Utrecht. The profile defines Addie as youthful, joyful, playful, and radiating this relentless, optimistic energy.
A very light energy.
Right, but looking at the timeline provided in the notes, Utrecht is one of the oldest cities in the Netherlands. It has this incredibly dense, heavy history. So how does a place anchored in antiquity end up with the personality of a playful indie rocker?
You have to look at the layers of authority the city has shed over the centuries. The foundation is literally militaristic. The Romans built the Fort Trajectum there in 47 CE.
Wow, it goes way back.
It does. And then you fast forward to the Middle Ages, and Utrecht becomes the headquarters of the powerful prince-bishopric.
Right, the religious ruling class.
Exactly. Imagine a city ruled by a religious figure who also wields total, sweeping military power. It was an environment of strict, ancient, top-down control.
Sounds incredibly heavy.
Very. And even later, in 1579, it was the site of the Union of Utrecht, which was the foundational serious political alliance of the Dutch Republic against Spain. That is an immense amount of historical gravity for one location to carry.
So where does the break happen? I mean, how does a songwriter translate that heavy, militant religious history into the upbeat, progressive culture Utrecht is known for today?
What's fascinating here is how that break from authority is physically mirrored in the city's architecture. The source material highlights the Dom Tower, the Domtoren.
Right, the massive tower.
At 112 meters, it is the tallest church tower in the entire country. But it stands completely isolated from its Gothic church.
Because of the storm, right?
Yes, in 1674, a catastrophic storm tore through the city and literally collapsed the nave connecting the two structures.
Just wiped it out.
Entirely. And instead of rebuilding it, the city just cleared the rubble and left the tower standing alone forever.
That is a brilliant metaphor for a lyricist. You have this towering symbol of the past, but it's physically severed from the institution. It leaves room for something new to grow in the empty space.
Exactly.
And right below that towering history, the document details the Utrecht Canal. Utrecht has these unique structures called wharfkelders.
The wharf cellars.
Right, built right down to the water level. Today, those old storage cellars have been converted into cafes, music venues, and shops, creating this vibrant, multi-level social ecosystem.
Which perfectly aligns with the heavy presence of Utrecht University, founded in 1636.
Oh, so you have this influx of youth.
Yes. You inject a massive, constantly refreshing student population into those ancient multi-level spaces, and you generate a very specific cultural output. Today, Utrecht's musical signature is defined by indie rock and experimental electronic music.
The notes mention bands like Kensington and Spinvis.
And modern, sprawling concert halls like Tivoli Vredenburg. The rhythm of Addie isn't a march. It's the kinetic, joyful movement of thousands of bicycles winding through medieval streets.
Which brings up that slang term from the notes, gezellig.
Yes, the living embodiment of gezellig, a uniquely Dutch concept of a cozy, friendly, welcoming atmosphere. Addie acknowledges the heavy past, but chooses to throw a festival in its ruins.
I love that. If Addie's the indie kid finding joy in the ruins, the notes suggest our next character is the one actually enforcing the rules.
Yeah.
That brings us to Bannock, representing the Hague, or Den Haag.
The leader.
Yeah, Bannock is pure leader energy, duty, bureaucracy, and national stability. The Hague is the political capital of the Netherlands, even though Amsterdam holds the title of the constitutional capital.
The imagery for Bannock is absolutely defined by statecraft and diplomacy. You have the Binnenhof, the historic parliament complex that dates all the way back to the 13th century, sitting right on the water.
And the Peace Palace.
Yes, housing the International Court of Justice.
Yeah.
The city's historical motto is literally Vrede en Recht, translating to peace and justice.
Very serious stuff.
Even their annual traditions are steeped in pageantry. On Prinsjesdag, the king travels to parliament in a literal golden carriage to address the government.
It sounds incredibly rigid. If you were writing a song for Bannock, you'd think it would just be a slow, solemn orchestral march. But the toolbox reveals this wild, almost unbelievable contradiction.
It does.
The Hague isn't just international courts and golden carriages. It is famously known as the Beat City of the Netherlands. How does the most buttoned-up diplomatic city in the country become the epicenter of rock and roll?
That friction is exactly what makes the character of Bannock so compelling for a songwriter. A city, much like a person, requires an outlet for its pressures.
A way to blow off steam.
Precisely. While The Hague holds the immense serious weight of global war crimes tribunals and national governance, it also happens to sit right on the North Sea. It contains Scheveningen, a famous seaside resort with expansive beach culture, seagulls, harbor seals, and events like Vlaggetjesdag, celebrating the first herring catch of the season.
And there's a deeply rooted connection to Indonesian culture, too.
Yes, because of the colonial history.
The Hague is the center for Indonesian cuisine in the Netherlands. The document mentions the Restafel, which is a huge spread of small, incredibly vibrant, spicy dishes and cultural events like the Tong Tong Fair. It's a sensory overload compared to the gray walls of a courtroom.
That coastal, multicultural environment fostered a massive rock scene. It spawned classic rock powerhouses like Golden Earring, famous for the driving, relentless track Radar Love,
Such a great song.
and raw, energetic artists like Anouk and Direct. For a lyricist, Bannock is the ultimate study in duality. You have the suit-and-tie bureaucrat during the day who trades the briefcase for a leather jacket and a Fender Stratocaster at night to let loose by the ocean.
It's the tension between the law and the release.
Exactly.
So if Bannock is writing the laws, the next character in our toolbox is the one actually building the roads. We are moving into a very intense duo now. Devin and Liz, representing Rotterdam and Amsterdam. Let's start with Devin, which is Rotterdam. The notes define Devin by a dark resilience and a stoic redemption arc.
The gritty survivor.
Yeah, this is a blue-collar survivor. Where does that specific attitude originate?
The defining psychological anchor for Rotterdam and for the character of Devin is a single date, May 14th, 1940.
World War II.
Yes. During the early stages of the war, the city suffered a devastating bombing campaign that almost completely leveled the historic city center. But the crucial detail for a songwriter isn't just the destruction.
It's how they reacted.
It's the response to it. When the dust settled, Rotterdam faced a choice. They could have meticulously rebuilt the old, quaint, gabled brick houses to restore what was lost. Instead, they chose a path of radical, unapologetic modernization.
They pushed forward instead of looking back. You see that in the architecture today. They built up from the ashes using bold, sharp steel and glass designs, like the Erasmus Bridge.
Yes, which locals call the Swan.
Right, the Swan. It's this sleek, asymmetrical...
Industrial masterpiece.
Exactly. Rotterdam boasts the largest port in Europe, so the entire visual language of the city is dominated by towering steel cranes, massive shipping containers, and relentless mechanical movement.
And that environment breeds a very specific type of cultural output. You see it perfectly reflected in the local slang provided in the notes. Residents refer to their city simply as 010.
0 and 0, just the area code.
Taking pride in their bare-bones telephone area code, their unofficial civic motto is Niet loon maar poëtsen, which roughly translates to don't talk, just work.
So if a songwriter is channeling Devin, what does that sound like? You can't put Niet loon maar poëtsen to a soft acoustic guitar.
No, you put it to Gabber. In the 1990s, Rotterdam birthed gabber and hardcore techno. We're talking about aggressive, heavily distorted, high-tempo electronic music pushing 190 beats per minute. If you think about the mechanics of that music, it literally mimics the sound of a heavy industrial port.
The pounding steel.
It is the rhythmic pounding of steel, pile drivers, and machinery. The subculture that grew around it was equally utilitarian shaved heads, tracksuits, bomber jackets, and Nike Air Max sneakers, built specifically for stomping all night long.
Function over fashion.
You also see that intense tribal loyalty in their football culture surrounding the Feyenoord team, their stadium de Kruip, and raw, full-throated anthems like Hand in Hand Kameraden.
Devon doesn't need to be pretty. Devon needs to be functional and indestructible.
Devon is the tough, blunt workhorse who survived the absolute worst, but you place Devon right next to Liz and the contrast is blinding. Liz represents Amsterdam. If Devon is the stoic survivor in a tracksuit, Liz is the charismatic dominant star in designer clothes.
The complete opposite. The notes describe Liz as unapologetically confident, thriving entirely on attention, spectacle, and global admiration.
That confidence is funded by centuries of immense concentrated wealth. Amsterdam's trajectory is staggering. It started in the 1200s as a humble, muddy fishing village along the Amstel River. But by the 1600s, during the Dutch Golden Age, it had evolved into the undisputed global trading powerhouse.
The VOC.
The Dutch East India Company, or VOC, essentially invented modern capitalism and the stock market right there on the canals. This wasn't just trade. It was the world's first multinational corporation pouring unprecedented riches into the city.
Which paid for everything we see today.
That wealth financed the iconic, picturesque 17th century narrow canal houses and cultivated an unparalleled art heritage, funding masters from Rembrandt to Van Gogh.
That golden history totally shapes Liv's modern persona. Today, Amsterdam is the global trendsetter. It is an electronic dance music powerhouse, exporting massive, stadium-filling superstars like Armin van Buuren and Martin Garrix.
And hosting the sprawling Amsterdam dance event.
Right. It is a city known worldwide for its liberal culture, progressive policies, and a nightlife designed to attract millions. Their historical motto is heroic, determined, merciful, and locals affectionately call the city Mokum.
Yes, Mokum.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The lyric toolbox explicitly highlights a cultural friction point. Mokum versus 010, Amsterdam versus Rotterdam.
It is the ultimate clash of subpersonalities. Amsterdam is the flashy, polished, internationally famous cultural crown jewel. It actively draws the tourists, the cameras, and the romanticization. Rotterdam, conversely, views itself as the unpretentious, hard-working engine of the nation.
The city that actually generates the economy while Amsterdam is busy throwing a party.
For anyone utilizing this framework, understanding that tension is vital. A song about the Netherlands isn't complete without acknowledging the resentment the workhorse feels toward the show horse and the show horse's dismissal of the workhorse's lack of refinement.
It's a sibling rivalry built into the national infrastructure. So we've had the indie kid, the rock and roll diplomat, the gritty worker, and the global superstar. Finally, the toolbox brings the tempo all the way down for our last subpersonality. We have Tira, representing the city of Delft.
The sage.
Yeah, Tira is characterized as reflective, wise, quiet, and deeply thoughtful, the sage of the group.
Delft projects a beautifully serene exterior. It is globally recognized for Delft blue pottery Delft's Blauw, the iconic, intricate blue and white ceramics they had been producing since the 1600s.
It's a very specific aesthetic.
The city is characterized by a slow, intimate canal culture, tree-lined streets with oak and beech trees, mute swans gliding on the water, and the legacy of its hometown painter, Johannes Vermeer. He captured that specific, quiet Dutch light perfectly.
It sounds incredibly idyllic. If a songwriter's looking at Tira, they're probably picturing a lone acoustic guitar or maybe a slow, melancholic piano melody. It feels almost too peaceful.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you realize that Tira's quiet wisdom is not born from a lack of conflict. Just like Devon's grit in Rotterdam, Tira's silence is a response to intense historical trauma.
Really.
The notes revealed that beneath Delft's calm, painted pottery surface are two deeply destabilizing events. In 1584, William the Silent, the foundational leader of Dutch independence, was assassinated right inside the Prinsenhof in Delft.
Right, that's it.
The bullet holes are still in the wall. Then, in 1654, the city suffered the Delft thunderclap,
Which was an explosion, right?
a catastrophic explosion of a secret gunpowder magazine that leveled a massive portion of the city and killed hundreds of citizens.
So beneath the serene canals and the blue and white ceramics, there is a literal history of political assassination and devastating explosions. How does a city process that level of sudden, chaotic violence?
By turning inward and seeking control through intellect, instead of lashing out or becoming aggressively industrial like Rotterdam, Delft internalized the chaos and became a modern sanctuary for precision, engineering, and science.
Making sense of the world through logic.
Today, it is anchored by the Delft University of Technology, one of the premier engineering institutions in the world. Tira is the deep thinker of the group because Tira has witnessed profound unpredictability and consciously chosen the path of meticulous craftsmanship and academic rigor. The Song of Delft isn't just quiet. It's heavily structured, highly complex, and tightly controlled.
So what does this all mean for us? We've explored Addie's joyful, rebellious resilience in Utrecht. We've seen Bannock's dutiful rock and roll diplomacy in The Hague. We felt Devon's stoic 190 beat per minute grit in Rotterdam, Liz's magnetic golden age confidence in Amsterdam, and Tira's quiet, complex, intellectual wisdom in Delft.
A full spectrum.
What this lyric toolbox proves is that a country is never just a monolith. It is a band. It's a collective made up of vastly different, sometimes violently clashing personalities that somehow manage to harmonize and create a single functioning national identity.
A very apt way to put it.
And I want you to apply this framework to your own life. If you were to take your hometown or the city you live in right now and map it to a subpersonality, what would its underlying rhythm be? What historical trauma or triumph created its specific slang? Are you navigating the streets of a playful Addie? Are you grinding through the industrial reality of a Devon? Or are you perhaps trying to keep up with the flashy expectations of a Liz? Looking at geography as a cast of characters really changes how you walk down your own street.
This raises an important question, something we haven't explicitly named yet, but which acts as the bass line running beneath every single one of these city profiles.
What's that?
The source material continually highlights two uniquely Dutch elements across all these disparate characters. First, their unparalleled water management. The Dutch are internationally defined by their ability to build dikes, polders, and intricate canal systems to control the water, constantly reclaiming land from the sea.
Right, fighting the ocean.
Second, there is that cultural obsession we mentioned earlier with gezellig or gezelligheid, the fierce dedication to creating cozy, warm, inviting, and friendly atmospheres.
Yes, whether it's the wharf cellars in Utrecht or the brown cafes in Amsterdam, that pursuit of coziness is everywhere in the document.
So consider the psychological link between the two. Is the famous Dutch pursuit of gezelligheid actually a deeply ingrained response to their harsh physical environment?
Oh, wow.
When your nation's entire history is defined by a constant, determined existential battle to keep the cold, dark, threatening North Sea from swallowing your home, perhaps creating a fiercely warm, brightly lit, and cozy internal world isn't just an aesthetic lifestyle choice.
It's necessary.
Perhaps it is a cultural survival mechanism. You engineer the massive dikes to keep the cold water out, and you relentlessly cultivate gezelligheid to keep the psychological warmth in.
That is a brilliant thought to leave on. You need the internal warmth to combat the external elements, no matter which subpersonality you are playing. Thank you so much for exploring this lyric toolbox with us today. It has been an absolute joy unpacking the complex rhythms of the Netherlands with you. We hope it inspired you to look at the world around you, and maybe your own hometown, with a bit more poetry. Until next time, we'll sign off the way they do in the notes. Do we?